and welcome to another episode of Huda's Career Info. I am your host, Huda, and I'm very excited to introduce my guest and friend, Dr. Rubaica Fidvi. Dr. Rubaica is a skilled, ethical, committed, compassionate, and client-centered physician and psychotherapist, having over 10 years of work experience with diverse client populations in inpatient, outpatient, university, and prison settings. She is proficient in conducting both individual and group psychotherapy from an anti-oppressive, strength-based, inclusive, and culturally informed perspective. Dr. Rubaica is also knowledgeable about various therapies to address mental health concerns, including cognitive behavioral therapy, solution-focused brief therapy, and motivational interviewing. I'm sure by now you're wondering, what is a lady with her background doing on Huda's Career Info? Why don't you check the episode and let me know what you think. Welcome, Dr. Rubaica, and thank you for joining me today. I am looking forward to an interesting career chat, and I'm looking forward to you sharing your passion for the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Hoda, for having me today. I'm really excited about this conversation and the insights from this conversation.
As you know, a part of the goal of this series is to ask everyone I interview a definition of a career term. And you chose career development. So my question to you, what is your definition of career development, and how does it relate to your background, which is varied, and you've jumped from one profession to the next?
Thank you so much, Hoda, for that question. So for me, I believe that career development is a lifelong process. It's across the lifespan. And for me, from my own personal career journey, it's been about continuous learning. It's been about a lot of introspection. So I am actually a trained physician. So I initially went to medical school. I've always been very interested in mental health. And my intention was, to train and practice as a psychiatrist. And then later on in life, I just realized that medicine was not my calling. And what I was really more passionate about was therapy. And so I made that switch to, training and practicing as a psychotherapist, for over a decade. And in the recent past, I've made another career transition, my third in 2 decades, as a career development practitioner. So it's been very exciting for me to kind of, be able to explore all these different careers and make these changes. And I think what was important for me, and something that I also highlight when I work with my clients, is when you're looking for a career, it's very important for you to ask yourself why. And what do I want to do, instead of just kind of going off the surface, and really finding something that aligns with your values, aligns with your interests. A lot of times when I work with clients, they'll tell me I have a certain set of skills for that role. My first question to them is, does this kind of work interest you? Is this something that you want to get out of bed every morning and be excited to do? And if the answer is yes, that's wonderful. But if the answer is no, then what I usually end up working with them on is identifying things that interest them, that excite them, that of course align with their values. Because to me, I feel if you have the skills to do a role, but no interest, that is not something that is going to sustain you for very long. But if you can figure out an interest, you can always develop the skills to do that particular kind of work. And that is something that would be very meaningful and very lifelong. So that is something that I really encourage my clients to do, is to do a lot of introspection, to be very open to continuous learning, to really figure out what their interests and their values are. And this aligns with my definition of career development.
Thanks so much, Dr. Rubaica, for sharing your definition of career development. And definitely your background highlights the importance of continuous reflecting before we continue in one life and say, okay, this is what I specialized in. I'm going to do it for life. So thank
Yes.
you so much for that. I'm going to ask you about your current role. Like you are now an employment counselor with JVS Toronto, and your clients, they come from different backgrounds with diverse needs. You cannot pick and choose your clients. You take them as they come. So how
Yeah.
would you describe your top clients?
So I work with a lot of different clients, but I would say that the three clients that come to mind that I really enjoy working with are newcomers to Canada, mature workers, and career transitioners. And I think these are typically clients that they come in and they, talk about a lot of barriers to career development or employment. For newcomers, it might be, adjustment to a new place, being able to showcase experiences that they've had previously and how that aligns with experiences and required skills in Canada. For mature workers, a lot of times it is about, how employers perceive somebody that is probably older, and this, misconception that, younger people are more favored. And again, with career transitioners, it is about, I have this training in this particular field, and I have these skills and these previous experiences, and now somebody's going to look at me and say, how can you now transition into a different sector or a different field? So for me, it is all about a mindset change, whether it is working with newcomers, whether it is working with mature workers, whether it is working with career transitioners. It's really being able to identify, harness, and celebrate the strengths that you bring to any role, because we all have strengths and we all have skills that are valuable. And I think a lot of times people get so caught up in the limitations and what they don't have, and that seems to overshadow their strengths and their skills that can oftentimes be twofold and threefold more than the limitations or the barriers. So I enjoy, kind of, as I tell my clients, I kind of am walking on this path with you and helping you to really see who you are and what you can offer employers and organizations.
I think by highlighting the different clients that come to you who come with the different backgrounds and different needs, you've moved on to the next question that I want to ask you. And it's a topic that you and I discussed. You always remind me that career development and success always go hand in hand with mental health wellness. And what you talk about is motivation, self-care, and so on. So, with your medical background and your professional experience, our discussions always highlight this link. Can you share with the audience and with those who are currently seeking new jobs, what advice would you give them in keeping the mental health wellness in mind?
Absolutely. One of the things that I always tell clients, and I had remembered this for myself when I was making career transitions and was, a job seeker myself, is I always tell clients that this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. So we have to really take care of ourselves. We have to find ways to motivate ourselves so that we can reach that end goal. So a couple of things that I do talk to clients about, especially when I think about motivation, one of the key things that comes to mind is a lot of people have this all or nothing thinking, which is, if I didn't get that, if I haven't gotten a job as yet, that's it. I haven't really accomplished anything. And when I work with clients, I always help them to really see the small successes and acknowledge the small successes. And there'll be a lot of times when I'll tell my clients, you got to give yourself a pat on the back. And you can see their faces light up when you acknowledge that. For a client maybe that didn't have a resume and now they put together a resume. For a client that maybe expressed anxiety about being in interviews and now they're interviewing and they're feeling more confident about the process. For somebody that was scared to kind of get onto social media and now they've got a LinkedIn profile and they just posted for the first time and they got some responses. Those are all successes. And those small successes are going to help you get to your final goal. And I think it's important to acknowledge those in order to keep that motivation going. Now, you did talk about self-care, and I do like talking about self-care. And one of the things I always have to even remind myself is that self-care is not a luxury, it's a priority. And we really need to make sure that we're taking care of our physical, mental, and spiritual needs in order to be able to sustain ourselves through this process of, finding that career, finding that job for yourself. Um, so I always tell clients, like, you've okay, if you're working on your career development, that's a certain amount of time that you schedule for that, but then find and schedule time to do other things as well. Time for leisure activities, that me time, time for your relationships, time for maybe physical exercise. I think all of this, when you're actually practicing all of this, it helps us to be more grounded, because I feel that if you have the right kind of mentality and the right kind of mindset, you're capable of doing anything. The other thing also, given my background as a cognitive behavioral therapist, one of the things that I work with clients is also being able to pay attention to the self-talk. Because, when clients come in and they say, I can't, I'm like, what is making you say that? Acknowledge the thoughts that are going on in your mind, identify them, confront those thoughts, and change those thoughts. So I'm a huge believer in affirmations as well. So I always tell clients, like, one of my favorite ones is, I can and I will. And especially in the process of career development, I think one has to be really open to new experiences. And I always tell clients this, that you might have a lot of well-intentioned people in your life that are going to give you advice and tell you this can work for you or this might not work for you, but you've got to dip your toes in the water. Only you can decide for yourself whether that temperature is going to work for you or not. So yes, okay, get the opinions of people, but at the end of the day, always listen to that voice inside of you, that because you know yourself better than anybody else.
I love what you're saying. And I want to, I guess, ask you as well, is that because you always say that you can do it at any age, and that if I am in my 40s or 50s, can I do this? I'm too old to start over, or, and you were young
Absolutely.
when you did your career transitions.
It's very interesting, but recently somebody asked me, what age are you planning to retire at? And I said, never. As long as I have like my mental capacity, as long as I have an openness to learn and an openness to embrace challenges, I want to keep going. And I want to, you only have one life, Hoda. You want to live it to the best of your abilities. I'm greedy that way. I want to have as many experiences as possible. So that is another thing that I tell, whether it's working with my mature worker clients or I am working with career transitioners, don't let anybody tell you you can't do anything. Go ahead and do
I
it for yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dr. Rubaica, I agree with you. And another topic that also you and I talk about is that, which has a lot of debate going on, is that asking that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? You are not shy about saying, no, we can ask this anytime. And many career professionals, including myself, were saying, please, let's not use this question anymore, because you cannot ask a young person, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's too soon, it puts too much pressure. Yet you pose this question with a different twist. You bring in a new perspective, and it's a perspective that's getting me to say, no, I want to use this question again. What do you want to be when you grow up? So can you tell the audience your thoughts on this question?
Absolutely, Hoda. So this is a question that I've asked myself several times at various points in my life. And I always say this is a question that has no expiration date, because I do agree with you. When you are 18 and you're making that choice of what college to go to, I think, you put those pressures on yourself to choose a career. And, if it works out for you, that's great. But a lot of people end up going to school, much as I did, and you get trained and then you get out into the field and you realize, oh, this is not working for me. And that's when, one has to be courageous enough to ask themselves the question, do I want to be open to doing something new? And that's the reason why I say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because for me, in the last 2 decades, as I said, I've made 3 career transitions, and I still am looking at making more career transitions as I move on. Because as I said, I'm very open to experimenting. I'm very open to new learning experiences. And I really believe that it is a very cyclical process. A lot of people think exploration is only, when you're 18, that age group. But you can do that in your 20s, you can do that in your 30s, in your 40s. And I say that this is a really exciting time for career development, because you're seeing more and more people making that, making that move from well-paying jobs to doing something that really, piques their interest, something that they're passionate about, something that they find is more meaningful. And again, it's interesting because it's not always all about money, but it's really finding. And I think, across the lifespan, we are evolving, Hoda. Our experiences shape us up. So maybe in my 20s I wanted to be something, in my 30s I realized, now my temperament and my attitude is maybe better for something else. So yeah, that's where I say never be afraid to keep asking yourself that question, and don't limit yourself.
I love your perspective. And when I think about it, a lifelong of learning and exploring, we need to every now and then ask that question, is that what do I want to do next? And
Absolutely.
so that's how you justify the question. And I like that twist.
Thank you.
I do have one more final question for you. And that is, do you have any specific accomplishments or future projects that you're working on that you'd like to share with the audience?
For sure, Hoda. So one of the things that I feel like, when I work with clients, is everybody is so caught up on the technical skills for any kind of career, any kind of role. And really what I like to highlight to people is the power of soft skills. And more recently, there was a term that I heard, power and superpower skills. And a lot of people don't really realize how important your communication skills, or your ability to work well in a team setting, or your adaptability or flexibility. Especially with COVID, we've learned a lot about adaptability and flexibility, how crucial those are to being successful in your career. So sometimes, I tell a client, like, they're all like hung up over, I don't have this technical skill or that technical skill. And I'm like, you're very likable, you have great communication skills, and that really gives people confidence to approach roles and even approach new careers. In terms of projects, one of the things that I have recently been working on is the importance of emotional intelligence, and developing a series of workshops to introduce emotional intelligence in universities and colleges. We're starting out with some pilot projects in India, and I'm really excited about that. And this all comes from, I believe, back in the day when I was in school, we were taught like math and science and English, but we were never taught life skills. And I'm hearing a lot of conversations these days about, I wish when I was in school, somebody taught me about stress management, or somebody taught me about, budgeting skills, or essential life skills. So in essence, what we're hoping to do with emotional intelligence is giving students, the tools to not only be successful during, the time that they're in university or college, but when they get out of university or college. That's one of the things that we've seen, is that they've got all these technical skills, but maybe they're not able to sustain in roles because they don't have those emotional intelligence skills. And when we talk about emotional intelligence, it's about the ability to be aware of your emotions, to be able to self-regulate, to be able to have good social skills, and build meaningful relationships with other people, to find ways to motivate yourself and to demonstrate empathy. So I'm hoping that by introducing this in school curriculums, we are building better professionals, and in turn better communities.
I am very excited to hear this. I mean, you are disrupting the education curriculum, which is something I'm hoping everybody involved can do. You talk about financial literacy. Like, I like to think of career literacy, but definitely emotional intelligence. These are topics that need to be discussed in the school system, and we have yet to see them given the priority that they deserve. So I'm proud of you, and yes,
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
hope you can one day bring it to Canada. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. And not just in the schools or in the universities, but I think in the workplace as well. Because as I said, emotional intelligence helps people, sustain in roles, to have greater life satisfaction. And I think that is crucial to develop as well.
Well, these are all the questions I had for you, Dr. Rubaica. Was there anything else that you would like to add, or anything that you want to wrap up with?
I would just say that, when we're thinking about career development, and as I've said, to tell people to be open-minded, to not be afraid to ask questions, to listen to that inner voice, and as I've said, always dip your toes in the water, figure out whether this works for you or not. And if it doesn't, we move on to the next thing, but never be afraid to try.
This is great advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining Huda's Career Info. What are your thoughts on my guest's perspective on the relationship between mental health and professional success? Let me know. You can connect with Dr. Rubaica Fidvi on LinkedIn. I am your host, Huda, and until next time, keep thinking about your career.